right, Justin, you want to kick it off? Looks like we've got
Sure.
Commissioner Boatwright and Alderman Hall joined us.
I'm just not seeing any other participants other than us. But
No. We have
everybody's
80.
here.
We have 80
Okay,
folks who've joined as participants.
great. All right. Good afternoon. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. My name is Justin Peterson. I'm the supervising planner for the Southeast Planning Region with the Department of Planning and Development. I'm joined today by Deputy Commissioners Cindy Rubik, David Scully, as well as Commissioner Boatwright, and Erica Selke, the supervising planner for the Far South region, and urban designers Jaya Ezagire and Tamara Fu. We're here today to introduce the next round of the Missing Middle Initiative, which our West Region team piloted last fall in North Lawndale with Alderman Monique Scott. This application round will offer a total of 54 parcels in 11 clusters across 3 different community areas represented by 6th Ward Alderman William Hall, who's here, as well as 7th Ward Alderman Gregory Mitchell and 21st Ward Alderman Ronnie Mosley. After introductory remarks from our alders, we will define what we mean by missing middle and give an overview of the program, as well as the application and evaluation process, and attempt to answer any questions that you might have. You can place questions in the question and answer box or wait until after the presentation for discussion. So with that, with Commissioner Boatwright here as well, I'd like to turn it over first to her and then to our alders for any opening remarks.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much, Justin, and thank you, team. I'm just jumping on to talk about how thrilled I am to roll out our second pilot for Missing Middle. Excited to work with these incredibly committed aldermen to see these vacant city-owned lots get back in productive use by increasing density and, most importantly, creating home ownership opportunities in these areas. And so I'm thrilled to have you all on. I'm excited to review your proposals and see the development teams move forward. I'm going to pass it to Alderman Hall in case he'd like to say a couple words before my team goes into what Missing Middle is, what lots we've identified, and how the program rolls out. And if Alderman Hall is not available, Justin, I'm going to pass it back to you.
All right.
The presentation until he's ready to chime in. Thank you, team, and welcome all.
Thanks, Commissioner. Okay, so what do we mean by missing middle? Most of Chicago was developed as a series of streetcar-oriented neighborhoods with a mix of single-family homes, as well as 2 to 6 flats, and then with some higher density courtyard and high-rise buildings closer to the lakefront. Missing middle is really defined as the range between single-family homes and the larger multifamily buildings, so like the 2 to 6 flat range. So this is exclusive of single-family homes in the larger buildings. Historically, this kind of gentle density provided affordable rental and ownership options across the city, but we've lost a lot of these buildings. On the north side, that's often been due to gentrification. A wealthy family or an investor may buy a 2-flat and then convert it into a single-family home. On the south and west sides, of course, we've lost a lot of these buildings to divestment and abandonment and ultimately demolition. As of the spring of 2025, the city owns more than 7,000 residential parcels. Most of them are in formerly redline neighborhoods that have lost 50% or more of their population since their peak in 1950. So this program is really taking those vacancies, those vacant lots that we're pre-screening and offering them for development as 2 to 6 flats on the south and west sides, where the current private housing market doesn't really support new construction. For some context,
I just want to chime in. I'm not seeing a PowerPoint. I don't know if others.
Yeah,
oh, you are.
can see it.
Oh,
yeah.
Sorry for my mistake then.
No problem. For just some context on new construction, a single family home or a 2-flat is trending north of $450,000 or $500,000 just to build, which means that without subsidy, new construction single family homes are typically listed at $700,000 or more, which is unaffordable to approximately 80% of the population. So this program is intending to provide affordable ownership options at something that's more attainable for most folks. City parcels are sold for $1 per parcel, with up to $150,000 per unit available in financial assistance, and that's allocated by the 2024 to 2028 Housing and Economic Development Bond. We anticipate that the program will support the construction of up to 750 residential units, between somewhere around 250 to 400 individual buildings over the course of the next 4 years. The overall program goals include creating affordable housing options for middle-income people that will support individual and community wealth building, stabilizing blocks with high vacancy, which helps reduce crime, and rebuilding neighborhood populations with gentle density that supports the retail and services that everyone wants and deserves. You can see some examples of the selected proposals from our first round in North Lawndale here. We hope that many of these will begin construction later this year. And for this round, we've worked with the alders to really to carefully select geographies for the program, building on existing investments and helping to fill gaps where we can have substantial positive impact on the surrounding neighborhood. In West Chatham, this is kind of as you can see here, this is the missing middle target area. It's a geography that's really kind of on the edge of West Chatham, in between West Chatham and Auburn Gresham, two stable neighborhoods, but this in particular pocket has a lot of vacancy, and it's also adjacent to a substantial amount of recent investment, including the Auburn Gresham apartments, the Healthy Lifestyle Hub, a new metro station on 79th, the Green Era campus, and then the broader 79th Street corridor plan that we've been working on with the community. So more specifically here, we're just south of 80th and west of Vincennes. These are 14 pins in 3 different clusters. We grouped the pins in clusters because it's understood that for developers, there's an efficiency in being able to develop a building and kind of march down the block with the various trades. And it helps keep things focused. So these range in size from 4 to 6 pins per cluster. And these have been pre-identified as being environmentally cleared for sale, so they won't require further environmental remediation work. In order to enable this kind of development, this missing middle 2 to 6 flat development, we are working with Alderman Hall to rezone this area. This is a small pocket that's zoned RS3, which really prohibits anything but single-family homes, except on much larger lots. To an RT4, which is basically allows 2 to 3 flats on a single pin and potentially 6 flats on combined pin. And I see Alderman Hall is here, so this might be a good opportunity, Alderman, if you wanted to chime in to say a few words, if you're available.
Yeah, first of all, I am. Thank you so much to everybody that's on the call. This is indeed long overdue. I'm grateful for the leadership of one of the best departments, but don't tell nobody else that, in the city. Jaya in particular has been from beginning to end consistent in making sure that we have everything we need, making sure that every deadline is met. And 99.9% of the time it's my fault. So I'm grateful for this team's consistency to get us to the finish line. And then a team is only as good as its leader. And so the commissioner has always answered the phone with 99 ideas I have. And only maybe a half of an idea makes sense by the time I'm done. But her guidance on what's best practices to build the ward. And in a span of just a little over 2 years, we've made up for the last 20 years. And so I'm grateful for all that you all do. And I cannot wait but I can wait. But I'm excited for the shovels to go on the ground and homes to be connected to Alderman Mosley's old school. You know, Alderman Mosley and Alderman Moore, they're Simeon graduates, and they're just so upset that they could not figure out a way to take that school from me. And so I'm going to give them a hallway pass to maybe come by and see these new homes. But I'm glad that, maybe the day will come where kids go walk down the street to Simeon and get a good education. So to the future we go, and I'm grateful and thankful.
Thank you, Alderman. Wonderful words, and thanks again to Jaya for a lot of the legwork here. We're going to move to the next geography. This is South Chicago and Alderman Mitchell. Is Alderman Mitchell here? Can't see if he is. No, he's not. Okay, so I'll pass it to urban designer with the far south
Alderman
team.
Mosley's. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Justin.
To Tamara to discuss the geography in South Chicago.
Thank you, Justin. So the missing middle area in South Chicago is located around the 79th Street Metro Station. There are some, key developments taking place, such as Thrive Exchange. It's a catalytic, equitable, transit-oriented development. And it's located within the missing middle area. We also are anticipating the Advocate Trinity Hospital and the Illinois Quantum and Microelectronics Park, just to the east of our missing middle area. And in general, we've also supported other projects. In this area for South Chicago, we are offering 3 clusters and a total of 14 parcels that will be available for development. And as for the rezoning, along 79th Street, we will be rezoning the area outlined in pink from B3-2 to B2-2. And then just to the south, the other area outlined in pink will be rezoned from an RS-3 to RT-4. And both of these rezonings will support some of our goals for the Missing Middle initiative. And in Morgan Park, our Missing Middle area is between the Major Taylor Trail and the railroad. The area is seeing some developments such as the renovation of the Jackie Robinson Park Fieldhouse. And we're also seeing development happening for the Morgan Park Commons, which is another retail and affordable housing development. And in this area, we are offering 5 clusters, and there's a total of 26 parcels. More specifically, this area is bounded by 107th Street to the north and 111th to the south. And the area in pink shown on this map will be rezoned from RS-3 to RT-4.
Thanks,
And
Tamara.
I'll pass it back to Justin.
And it looks like we do have Alderman Mosley. Alderman, if you'd like to say a few words.
Always good afternoon, everyone, and thanks so much for this amazing opportunity. When we talk about a successful model of being able to live, work, and play, that live is so essential. It was highlighted about the $15 million investment from Jackie Robinson Park or new field house. When I Major Taylor Trail, another great recreational activity. I think about West Point School of Music. I think about even the new gym that's coming to the Marshfield Plaza right there at 115th and Marshfield. This gives the opportunity for 111th Street to really be a strong commercial corridor, to bring back the investment to Black entrepreneurs of the area. There's the great home of the hoagie that is here. There's also Aaron's Cup and others. And so this really helps build in that market and create a much more desirable area that competes with Morgan Park in its entirety, right? That we all know the anecdotes of East Morgan Park and how residential areas or real estate narratives can be created. So thank you for being a great partner in changing that. And that is in part due to the amazing leadership coming out of the Department of Planning and Development. And so the 21st Ward is thankful that you are helping us thrive.
Thank you, Alderman. Okay, we'll move on to the application process. Like all city land sales, the applications must be submitted through Shy Block Builder. That's our online platform, and I'm going to just kind of demonstrate that really quickly. You can just Google Shy Block Builder, and it should be the first result. And then if you go apply now, this pulls up a map. Now, what's shown on this map is really for the most part our side yard and market rate development. but if you select the Missing Middle program under this second pull down, it will reduce that to just the Missing Middle sites, so we can see the different geographies that we've been discussing. Oops, let me open my slides. There we go. So applications will have already opened. They open on April 1st and will close on midnight of Friday, May 16th. Qualified applicants will then be selected in the next subsequent months. Hopefully by June or July, we'll have a clean picture and recommendations to move forward. And then, of course, we have another one of these informational webinars this Friday, in case there's any questions or that you wanted to return to. Eligibility requirements: applicants must select at least one of the 11 clusters offered. The clusters range again from 4 to 6 parcels. The applicant should include a development plan, a construction timeline, at least early conceptual design and budget. Applicants must use architects that are self-certified by the Department of Buildings. Self-certified licensed architects take full responsibility for code compliance, which simplifies the permitting process. Other applicant responsibilities include site planning, entitlements, marketing, and sales. And as I noted earlier, we've already selected parcels that don't require further environmental review, so we don't need to go through that process. And again, we're working with the alders to amend any zoning where necessary to support 2 to 6 flats. The maximum unit sale price will be determined in relation to 140% of the area median income. So that's also related to household size. So it's kind of a number that's a little context dependent. Financial incentives, again, $1 purchase price for each individual pin and up to $150,000 per unit subsidy, not to exceed $5 million total per applicant. This is also in terms of the subsidies. It's structured as a reimbursable grant that will occur at substantial completion of half the buildings in a cluster, and then again at substantial completion of all the buildings in the cluster, and then finally upon issuance of a certificate of completion. Again, the zoning changes, as I mentioned, we are working with the alders already, so this is in process, so this should not be something that the individual applicants really need to deal with. We're trying to get ahead of that. Development objectives, overall, again, applicants will be received and score higher that are consistent with kind of everything we've discussed, that are attempting to build well-integrated family housing, that are providing new homeownership opportunities, that are supporting neighborhood repopulation and gentle density, which again supports the retail corridors and services, that are adhering to just broader transit-oriented development and design excellent goals. And we're particularly also interested in partnerships with developers at varying levels of experience, which helps build local capacity. So if there's a contractor, for example, that maybe has done a lot of renovation work, but is yet to really take on a new build, partnering with somebody or a team of people that has some of that experience is definitely it's something that we'd like to see, and that'll help build capacity for future developers. So this is an example of our evaluation criteria and scoring rubric. As you can see, 2/3, the top 2 categories of the eligible points are weighted to the applicant's proof of experience, financial capacity, and just general project feasibility. So that's really, the best way for DPD to evaluate it and figure out who we think has the ability to move forward with these in a timely manner. Again, we recommend that junior developers, folks without a lot of experience, find partners. And then design quality, impact, and engagement round out the rest of the scoring for 100 total points. So any applicants that are participating in the programs and selected and receiving financial incentives under this program will be required to enter into a redevelopment agreement with the city and to comply with WMBE, prevailing wage, and local hiring targets. buildings that are 6 or more units, which we would expect to be rare, would probably be more in the 2 to 3 flat range, will be required to meet the sustainable development requirements. Strategies for that include reducing energy and stormwater runoff, as well as providing bike or EV charging. And just as a review again, as I mentioned, the environmental conditions have already been cleared. And again, we're working on the zoning. And then one final note, the affordable requirements ordinance will apply to any building or set of contiguous parcels with 10 or more units. So if there were 4 3-flats in a row on 4 contiguous city pins, then that would trigger the ARO, for example. And then in terms of an overall expectation or development timeline, as folks probably know, DPD's been working to cut the tape and facilitate faster land sales and development projects. This is our anticipated development timeline for this release of Missing Middle. So we would hope that any applications that we're receiving and reviewing this summer, that we would get to City Council approval by the fall, and then hopefully break ground in the spring of next year. So that concludes our presentation. We're happy to take and answer any questions. After this meeting, if folks have any additional questions that they think of later, please email those to Jaya for the West Chatham, the 6th Ward sites, and then to Tamara for the South Chicago and Morgan Park clusters in the 7th and 21st Ward. And I'll pause there. See.
Thanks, Justin. We did have some general questions about other uses for these parcels. I did want to go over, when we released this initiative on April 1st, we also released hundreds of other parcels as part of other programs on the Shy Block Builder website. And so if you're not interested in participating in this program, we also have other parcels available for market rate development. We have other parcels available for open space, for urban agriculture. So please, this is very specific to these 3 focus areas. It's specific to trying to repopulate these communities and to make sure we have owner-occupied residents living on these blocks.
Thanks, Cindy.
Mm-hmm.
I see a question here, or looks, do all sites qualify for ETOD? So, that's in reference to a geography that is related to transit access. Most of the city does. I can say for sure the 6th and the 7th Ward sites do. I'm not sure about the 21st Ward sites. But that kind of, there's zoning implications on that. It doesn't really affect this scale of development. For example, reducing parking requirements, on a larger building. In this case, if it's a 3-flat, developers can typically fit 3 parking spaces in the rear off the alley. So it's like a 1-to-1 ratio. This is kind of below the radar for what that really affects.
I can go into the next questions
Sure.
about the financing and the financial incentives. The question was, what factors go into the financial incentive offered? And this goes back to the Housing and Economic Development Bond that was passed last spring. And, it was a bond that was approved by City Council, and it identified one of the programs would be this Missing Middle Initiative, Housing Infill Initiative. And it identified, up to $50,000 to $150,000 per unit in subsidies to go towards funding the gaps for building these units in these underinvested areas. And so it really was identified already in the program book for the Housing and Economic Development bond that was passed last year. So we're really just implementing what was already passed through this program guide. And we do encourage everyone to read the program guide for this Missing Middle Housing Initiative so that there's a lot more information in there. But that's kind of what determined the range of financial incentive that we identified in this program. And then for there was a different question about the land sale being $1, which is very welcome, but the concern about having to prove up financing before as part of this application or before the land sale transaction happens. So it's really a two-step process. The first step is really submitting an application, right? And when you submit an application, we do need to see your proposed budget. We do encourage all applicants to make sure you work closely with the self-certified architect that we've identified is a requirement for this program, but also someone who has experience with building, locally and with construction costs. So you get a very clear sense of what you will need in terms of budgeting for building these units and the ones that you're proposing to build. And then, at that time, we would need your application to show your proposed sources as well. And so this could be construction loan, this could be equity, then you would show the financial gap request that you're asking for, again, between $50,000 to $150,000 per unit. And then, and that's what we would really need, as well as the breakdown of the uses for each of the buildings and per cluster of, the total number of buildings in the cluster. And then once that is evaluated, we select the applicants like we've done with North Lawndale. And then, that has to go through a land sale legislative process, including, city council review and approval. But to sell the land for vertical development in any scenario for the city, we do need to have proof of financing and the permit issued before we're able to transact on that land sale. So that's just something as part of our business of land sales that we need to do. Hopefully that answers that question.
So we have another question. Is there a award process that developers will be required to go through? Are the parcels intended to be for sale, or can some be retained by the developers as rental? Are there any city subsidies available for rentals? So the program is meant for owner-occupied building to be owner-occupied or to be sold as condos. So a developer or an individual could buy a building and live there and rent out a unit or two, or they could be sold individually as condos. Certainly, we will review, all our applications and make recommendations with the alders. We'll work, hand in hand with the alders to move forward. And then, we would look to the alders for any additional, community input or process that they would want to follow.
We will have a community meeting after we select. That's what we did with North Lawndale. And so definitely the applicants should know and expect that. And I think that's on our process slide towards the end.
And then again, yeah, I mean, if there are any city subsidies for rentals, I mean, the subsidy is at the per unit basis. So, I mean, it doesn't, again, if somebody were to buy a building and rent them out, I mean, they're still effectively being subsidized to construct the unit, but not at I guess the back end of the rental of rental. And then again,
the purpose of the program is for owner occupied units. And so that's why, we did not set this up to have the developers rent these units. Instead, it's really meant to sell them. And so that's the intention of the program. I can explain a little bit more. I think there was a question here, how do the subsidies work? So Justin, can you go to a different slide? I think there's a slide that talks about this a little bit more here. Okay, so the last bullet, again, it explains the subsidy per unit, and then we want it. This is going to be capped at $5 million per applicant. So just keep that in mind. And then like all of the city's grants, these are structured as reimbursable grants. And so we need to make sure that in this scenario, we would have at least these would be reimbursements for eligible costs for each cluster, and they would occur at substantial completion of half of the buildings. So if your cluster is four parcels, then you would have to build and complete 2 of those buildings, 2 out of the 4, to get your first reimbursement, which would be a 50% reimbursement. And then we have a second reimbursement at substantial completion of all of the buildings in the cluster. And then the remainder, the 100% of the reimbursement would be provided upon issuance of the certificate of completion. So just keep that in mind when you're kind of understanding how the subsidy would work. There was a question about how do we look to partnering with other developers, which is a great question. So after we are having 2 Missing Middle webinars, one today and right now, and then the other one will be on Friday. And after those webinars are completed, we are going to send an email out to all of the registrants. And we will be looking to post a list of all of the people who have registered for these webinars, their contact names and their emails. If you do not want your name or email on that list, you'll need to email us that request to omit your name and contact information by Monday at 9 a.m. so that we can accommodate your request before we post the list on Monday. But we do hope that all of you, look towards doing that, and you'll be able to see who has signed up for this webinar accordingly.
Okay. There's another question about community engagement as part of the evaluation criteria. Can you elaborate what you'd like to see for that? That's really, it's relatively small portion of the evaluation. We don't expect folks to do a ton of legwork necessarily ahead of applying. But it's helpful to know if, there's support from local organizations or the alderman's office, obviously. And sometimes that helps gauge us, obviously on the DPD side, we don't know everybody. So it just helps us understand, the community.
And it could be as simple as, including that you've emailed
Yeah.
them about your application and your request.
Also a question about is R2 zoning, which isn't really what we're talking about, like buildings with an apartment on with businesses and apartments in the same building. Most of these are going to be RT4 zoning, which is exclusively residential. It's the next step up from single family home only zoning, but it allows up to 2 or 3 units per typical city lot. We do have a few that will be in a B2 district, and that's the reason why we're making that zoning change is because the B3 district, which is a common kind of major street designation, doesn't allow for ground floor residential, but the B2 does. So that's a case where we don't necessarily have we'd like to see what comes back. It's conceivable that I guess somebody would apply with ground floor retail space, but we're not expecting that or requiring it.
The one question is, does the capital stack matter if using a variety of government subsidy and private funds? So the capital stack does matter, and we want to see what are the other government subsidy programs you're applying for, and how likely is it that you will be able to secure those funds. And then for private funds, that's equity. So we do want to know how much equity each applicant is putting in the deal. So that is definitely something that we want to know, and you'll see that in the application process. We have a template for that budget and the sources and uses that we want to see per building and also per cluster. I'll answer the next question too. Once accepted to work with MissingMiddle, will developers be delayed when it's time to start? I know it's hard getting things completed with the office. So, you know, if I think that's a fair question, but I do have to say the way we have organized this initiative is really to streamline the process as much as possible, right? So we have selected the 54 parcels that we have selected are categorized and have been pre-screened by our environmental reviewers at the city, and we are able to proceed with selling them, and that's faster, which is why we've selected them. And then we also, as you know, have identified in the fourth bullet here on the slide that the architects need to be self-certified by the Department of Buildings, and that your permit application has to be through the self-certified program. And the reason is because that process allows you to get a permit much faster, right? Within 10 business days. So our goal here and the application process is as streamlined as possible. So that, and as clear as possible. It's the reason why we're doing these webinars as well. So you're as well informed as possible, and we can get the best submissions as we can. And so our goal is to proceed as quickly as we can. We would already have draft term sheets done. We already have been working with our lawyers on figuring out all the templates to be able to proceed through the legislative steps. We've already obviously been coordinating with our alders for the zoning change and for this initiative to begin with. So we want to be able to process these as quickly as possible. And our goal is to do groundbreakings, towards the beginning of the year next year. So that's how fast we want to proceed.
Thanks, Cindy. There's a couple questions related to financing and how much needs to be provided from the applicant side, or if they what is how does the city financing fit into a private sector? Typically, the city, wants to be a gap filler, not the first one in, but the into basically fill the gap and make the project feasible. So we would expect that applicants would be able to, finance the rest of the project, but for whatever city subsidy we can provide through whatever sources they have, equity or private lending. So that, and basically that's again a major piece of the evaluation criteria. So if someone comes in and says they don't have any financing, and there's no indication that they have a path to do so, then that's going to be hard for us to score well. Or if somebody says, yes, I have it, but they don't provide any kind of indication of what it is, that also may not score as well. So if applicants can provide, for example, a letter from a lender as a letter of intent to fund, or a line of credit, that really strengthens the application. That lets us know that the applicant is capable of securing development funds. And with the subsidy, what is the requirement, or how long does the owner occupant have to live in? Cindy, do you have an answer for that one?
I think we'll answer that one in an FAQ. There's some other folks that want to double check on that before we.
Okay.
I believe there's an agreement that has to be documented in the sale transaction on the deed, and you can sell. There's no restrictions to sell, but it still has to, the sales price that would still have to not exceed the 140 AMI percentage cap. So we're not preventing sales transactions from happening in the future. We just want to make sure that the sales cap is retained.
Good question. Where can I get more information on qualifications for the 150,000 grant? I mean, that's really what the application process is. It's vetting applicants. And again, that's money that's intended to subsidize the development of the building itself. Not necessarily of a person like renting or buying or purchasing it. And the cap then at 140 AMI is the way of that we're trying to maintain affordability. How do you determine how much of a subsidy will be granted? We have a cap at the high end of 150,000. That's just the max, and given that we've got a certain amount of funds for 4 years, 8 rounds, we're trying to make sure we use that most efficiently. I don't know if there's another clear answer in terms of anything less than that. We have looked at comps in the area in terms of in all 3 of these geographies. What are buildings selling for, particularly something like a 2 or 3 flat, to give us a sense of where we are. But I don't know if anybody else has anything else to add there.
Yeah, I mean, I would say that, it also is really, one of the reasons that I think we're asking for your budget, because it's Justin mentioned, the city funds are, intended to really fill the gap and be sort of the last money in to make the project happen. So, we definitely want to make sure that, kind of the rest of the funds are there, and that we're, bringing our resources in to make sure that we can actually implement the project.
Just to address, there's a kind of high level question. Where would you like to see market rent for the community? That's not really like something that DPD does, right? I mean, we want housing to be affordable for everybody, if possible, at different price points. But the rent is set, really by cost of building new buildings and whatever people will be able to pay to live in various types of housing. So it's not up to DPD. We understand that market rate rent is not necessarily affordable rent, right? So we are trying to fill the gaps underneath that. More questions, I think, about how the sales price and how this relates to AMI. It's hard for us to like set a clear number or range right now, because AMI varies by year. And again, it varies by household size and other factors. So that's something that'll have to be determined later. Question, do we have to have a certain amount of money to qualify or make a certain amount of money to qualify? No, it's really, proof of financing is about the ability to leverage funds. So it can be equity. If somebody happens to have a large amount of money in the bank, then it's there. That's easy. But typically developers, have a line of credit with a bank and just operate on a series of loans.
The question, are container homes permitted for development in this initiative? We've not stated it's an option. It's not Our critical issue is that, and if you can go to the evaluation criteria, we absolutely need the architect to be self-certified. That's important. And then we also look at design quality. So we want to make sure that the proposals are high quality design, that it has good building materials, and it relates well to its context and provides some design diversity. So if you're able to do that with your proposal, then we will consider it.
One other thought too on the container home. I mean, just to be clear that, we hope that these units will be big enough for a family, right? Like even like a 3-flat with each individual unit having 3 bedrooms. That's big enough, to support a couple of kids. Container, there's been a lot of interesting things obviously done and experiments with container housing, but just at the starting point, a container is only 8 feet wide, right? So it's not as gracious, obviously, as a standard flat unit. So like if there was a creative solution for that, I mean, that, could be interesting, but that's not what we expect.
The question, so it sounds like the less of a subsidy required, the more favorable the application will be scored. Really, I would focus more on just making sure that the budget is realistic. Especially, in these changing times with inflation and construction costs, we want to make sure that your project can pencil out. We want to make sure that you're going to be able to proceed if you're selected. And so that's really, I think, the most important thing, I would say. Others feel free to chime in, but that we want to make sure that your project can be built.
The question is the percentage of AMI for the sales price for the city or for the area. It's determined by metro area. So metro area median income, basically. Again, just in terms of housing prices, I mean, the average housing price across the metro area is around 350,000. But again, for any new build in the city, given development costs, if it's a single family home, it's typically going to be twice that, because the cost of construction is 450 or 500,000, which is again why we hope by doing 2 or 3 flats, that cost of construction is not that much higher. But when you chop that up by 2 or 3, homes, you're able to meet closer to what the average housing price is for the area.
I'll answer the next question. The subsidy goes to the developer to build the property, correct? Does the buyer have to qualify for the sales price or the amount of the building minus the amount that the subsidy brings the price down to? So this is a great question. The bond that was passed, the Housing and Economic Development Bond, it is to reimburse capital costs only. So that is why it has to be a reimbursement grant to the developer to cover construction cost gaps. It is not an incentive that we can provide to the buyer, to the purchaser, once the building is completed. There are no income restrictions for the purchaser, for the buyer of the unit once it's completed. So it's just a maximum sales cap, and there are no income restrictions for the purchaser or the buyer. Hopefully that answers the question.
Yeah, we'll add that the buyer is welcome to any, support that they qualify for outside of the program. We just don't, sort of line that up for them. But there are other funding sources that could be, added on to support the buyer. But this program is specifically for developer subsidy to support the construction and building of the properties.
There's a question about reusing the same design on each lot. We understand that there's a obvious efficiency in reusing designs. We're not gonna look too poorly on that. I mean, if there's a lot in several in a row, depending on the alderman and the community, we might ask for variations in something like brick color, just to give it a little bit of variety, so it doesn't seem kind of cookie cutter. But we don't want to add additional costs by requiring a bunch of redesign.
Is there a minimum size that the units will have to be 1 or 2 or 3 bedrooms, as well as square foot requirements of the units? Although we don't have a minimum size, we do have in our evaluation rubric, our priority is given to projects that maximize the density. So we do want to make sure that there are more units, right? This is why we're rezoning these parcels to begin with, so that we can have more units, and we can, again, our goal is to repopulate these communities. So, but, and also we look to make sure that the unit sizes are reasonably varied and have, the number of units, a number of bedrooms that makes sense for this community area as well, and for the context of the street. So if you're seeing on the street, there are a lot of, 3-bedroom units, then it makes sense to kind of make sure you have that relationship with the context already.
Yeah, just to add, I mean, again, if we think about missing middle versus single family homes and multifamily, larger multifamily. Single family homes, obviously bigger, meant for families. Multifamily housing, very often, that's really just one bedroom units, or two, maybe 2 bedrooms occasionally. Very rarely 3 bedrooms. So, filling the in between, the 2 to 3 bedroom, is really, I think, consistent with, and also to have units that folks can live in for a long time. We don't have a lot of housing, apart from these older missing middle examples, where a family can live in a building, but they don't have to own the entire building, right? We just don't have as many of those type of units, and that's what we're trying to fill.
The next question, can you describe the $50,000 to $150,000 range, and what DPD is looking for from developers to provide closer to the $150,000 subsidy per unit? Again, we're looking for realistic, accurate budgets, and we want to make sure that the projects will be able to be constructed. And we understand, because maybe there's a different slide that outlines, our initiative does trigger prevailing wage requirements. It does trigger, oh, we passed it. Here, it does trigger construction jobs paid at prevailing wage rates, requires the 26% minority business enterprise contracting, as well as 6% women business owned enterprise contracting, and 50% of all construction worker hours performed by Chicago residents. This is because it's a financial assistance that's being provided by the city, and this is our requirement with all redevelopment agreements. And so we recognize that might increase your costs, and so that's why the budget is a really important submission requirement for this application process. And we're just looking for as accurate as possible a budget, itemized budget amounts. Okay, I think we're really towards the end. We will be providing an FAQ online as well. And I don't know if the alderman, do you have any closing words for us? Alderman Mosley, looks like Alderman Hall has had to go. No, all right. Debbie, do you want to say anything? Close us out?
Yeah, I'll say the final words. Just, really appreciate, all of you all coming out, and we're really excited about this initiative. we're excited to work together and collaborate and you know, hopefully continue to build investment in our communities, as well as find opportunity to repopulate, you know, the south and west sides of Chicago. So, you know, feel free to reach out for, you know, any additional questions. And yes, as Cindy mentioned, we'll also be publishing an FAQ with some of these questions in a little bit more detail. So thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.